It's 12:05 now. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We have been talking for weeks here and working on how we can contribute. Beautiful stories of how people are helping each other in COVID-19. And so we wanted to do our little bit, and this is one of our ideas. So if you're like the people I've been talking to and me, you're here because the coronavirus has you pretty concerned and alarmed about what if you suddenly got sick, seriously. And we're all seeing the news reports. We're all reading the stories. You can flip the slide, Megan, too. We're all seeing these pictures of people in hazmat suits and hospitals and isolated from loved ones and, even more covered than in that picture. It's getting kind of familiar if we look at it enough. And not only is it really scary getting sick with this, there's a certain percentage of the population for whom it is deadly. And sometimes those people are in their 30s and 40s. It's shocking, really jarring. We've also been learning more about the treatments because this is evolving and makes me think about what kind of treatment do I want? Do I want a respirator? We had a family Zoom meeting on Saturday. My brother said, I want y'all to know I don't want a ventilator. Of course, he has his healthcare directive, and we'll talk about that today so you can have yours too. But all these things, I think, are going through our heads. Another thing is that once they think you have COVID-19, you're isolated. And that makes me think about, well, is the doctor going to be able to talk to my healthcare agent? If I can't talk, how will they communicate? How is this going to work? Just so many things to think about. On top of the really difficult emotional things. So I have good news for you. A healthcare directive can address these concerns about getting the healthcare you want, about having the right instructions in there, having a valid form, picking somebody who it's going to work for, making it work in this, particularly even in this situation. So we're going to walk through completing a Minnesota healthcare directive today, so you can do that. And so I'm really glad you're here. These things are so easy to procrastinate, very normal. 75% of Americans don't have a complete updated estate plan. But now some of us are really busy, but some of us have more time at home. So we have time to do it, and we have a lot of motivation because COVID-19 is a perfect example of how we don't know when the storms of life are coming up, and that's why it's so much better to be prepared. So I'm really thankful that you guys are here on this short notice today. We say at our firm, we help you get rigged for smooth sailing because you never know when the storms of life are going to come up. And it's better if you're rigged and you're more prepared. It can go much smoother. Let me tell you a story about a client of mine, Jeff. He called about 1.5 years ago, and he was actually about 60. And so him and his wife were a little younger than the couple in this picture. They were, she was 57. And she had fallen down the basement stairs and incurred a brain injury at 57. So it was a terrible, traumatic thing. She was home alone. And when someone found her, they had the ambulance come. She was in the hospital. Then she was in transitional care. By the time he called us, they had got her in a nursing home where she's going to live the rest of her life. This was a serious brain injury. However, now, they were very overwhelmed with everything happened, but now they were ready to deal with the fact she had no healthcare directive. He had no authority to make healthcare decisions for her. And it was difficult because she could still talk and so forth. So she was refusing meds. It was really harming her. So we had to get a guardian appointed by the court. We got the husband appointed guardian, and we had to have him appointed conservator to handle her finances also, by the way. So this was out in Washington County, Stillwater, and we had the hearing. But it takes a couple months to get the papers, and it probably costs, at least $3,000 to $5,000, probably $5,000 at least. And it was just so much stress when he was already worried about finances, taking care of her, the whole situation. It was very difficult and sad. I was glad we could help them, but I would have much rather helped in the first place to do a healthcare directive. And so that's why I'm glad you're here today. So that whole experience they had was just far worse than it needed to be. And so what we do at our firm, we call our estate planning the smooth sailing system. And part of that is we make sure that everybody over 18 has a healthcare directive and some other things. But today we're talking about the healthcare directive. So it's really important. And if they did that, they'd have a lot less stress and saved a lot of money and so forth. So, of course, I'm not talking about the whole smooth sailing system today. We're just going to talk about the healthcare directive, walk you through how to complete it. It will take about half an hour, I estimate. And then you will be in a setup to get the healthcare you want. And with the people making decisions where they want, the people you want making the decisions if you can't, and you can have peace of mind. So in Minnesota, it's called a healthcare directive now. You maybe heard living will, you maybe power of attorney. These used to be around, and the living will actually is still valid, but it's like really outdated. This is an up-to-date healthcare directive. It's a really good one. I've never seen any free healthcare directive with some of the provisions that our healthcare directive has. So I'm really glad that you're doing this. And if you don't have the healthcare directive, write it in the chat and we'll send it to you. So anyway, by having your healthcare directive in place, you will be set for more smooth sailing in the rough seas if and when they come. So here's our roadmap. We're going to learn how to complete a safe harbor state law healthcare directive. I'm going to walk you through it step by step. Then we'll answer questions. Leave time for that. Then I'm going to offer you a free resource in case you want to do more. And then the fourth thing is I have a closing story. So let's dive into the healthcare directive. And I'm excited because you are going to be ahead of most people when you have one of these filled out properly is the other key. So the first thing we're going to do is pick the healthcare agent. So Megan, if you can please pull up the slide of the healthcare directive. Gosh, where did I put mine? Okay, I'm going to be looking on with you guys. How could I just had it. This is comical. Okay, there's the healthcare directive. And let us know if you can't see it. So at the top, it's Minnesota's healthcare directive, and we customize it. So this is a form that we use. We modified it so you could try to make it really easy for you to do at home using provisions that most of our clients use. So first of all, you put your name in that blank. I blank, that's where you put your legal name. Okay, this is the document that allows me to, part one, name a healthcare agent. Part two, give them certain powers and instructions. So you can, read that in more detail later. Next is appointing a healthcare agent. This is who you want to make decisions if you can't. So what happens is the doctor decides that you can't communicate or understand the decisions. And then that's when this person has the authority. So they can't just, pull the plug on you when you could decide for yourself. Okay. So that's a protection for you. I encourage you to think about 2 or even better, 3 people. Okay. They could be, I would say, we spend more time consulting with people one-on-one about this, but so I'm going to be making some general statements. One at a time is kind of nice, unless you're really sure they're going to get along and you have 2 kids and you might say, I want both of them or something like that. So you want to think about who are 3 people, 2 or 3 people you could name. Do you want to name them like all at the same time or one after the other? We set the form up to be in one after the other. So the first one is, I authorize my medical provider right there. Yep, there's a bold statement, and then you put in a name there. That's your first person. Okay. When you go down to appointment of alternate healthcare agent, that's where you start putting the successors, we call them. Okay. So you want to pick people who can follow your wishes. Some people are too tender-hearted, maybe to pull the plug if that's what you want at a certain point. They don't have to be healthcare professional. A lot of times people pick a healthcare professional or worker if they have one in the family because they're going to be more knowledgeable. But a lot of it has to do with emotions and values and, are they really going to do what you want? Also, are they available? Okay, I think this is another COVID-19 thing. You want somebody who can reach by cell phone. That's because this may be a totally virtual connection, not in person, right? Ideally it would be in person, but we may be over FaceTime or something like that. So another thing I would say is you can ask them. I encourage you to ask them ahead of time if they're comfortable in the role. Okay. So name your first person. I always put phone number on there because they're probably going to be using the phone in an emergency, the relationship and their address. If their address changes, you don't have to redo the form. Okay. Appointing the alternate healthcare agent, the bottom of page 1. Can you go back up just a little bit, Megan? I still was reading that part. There you go. Okay. So I trust and appoint the following individuals. If more than one individual is named, such individuals shall serve jointly or consecutively. Okay. So if you're going to do, if you want them one after the other, that means consecutive. If you want them at the same time, then you check jointly. Okay. Next is if more than one individual is to serve jointly, if you pick the joint option, then you got to choose, do you want them to act independently? Like, let's say you have 2 kids, you pick them both. Can the doctor just talk to whoever's available and they decide? Or shall they act by majority? Let's say 2 out of 3, or they both need to agree. Or you want to say should act unanimously among those who are reasonably available. So like if one is also sick with COVID-19 and the other is left, that's unanimous if one person does it. I hope that makes sense. Again, you can put questions in the chat if it's not making sense. So below that, you can put the name of your alternate healthcare agent, number 1, number 2 is second alternate, and number 2 again. Look at that. Well, we worked hard on this form, but it says 2 number 2s. Okay, maybe we can fix that and send it out again, Megan. But the third healthcare agent, so those are listed like 1, 2, 3. If you want them at the same time, you should, you'd say name of first healthcare agent and alternate, and then next would be name of first alternate. Not sure if I'm explaining that right, so you guys let me know if you have a question about that. So that is the slide on picking your agent. Okay, really important to pick somebody who you think will follow your wishes and to have backups. If you have backups, your documents will last longer. I always try to draft documents that will last as long as possible. We want to keep them up to date, but we also want to try to make them last so you don't have to come back and probably pay a lawyer some money and probably not have the document up to date. So next is going to be a bunch of provisions for the powers that you are going to give your healthcare agent. And a lot of this, a lot of this is boilerplate because I recommend that you have it. So this section on the bottom of page 2, they can make healthcare decisions for you about getting treatment, stopping treatment, food, etc. B, they can choose your healthcare providers. C, they can choose where you live. Like, because you might need to go to Bethesda for a while and get better or something. I don't know. And then they can choose the choices that relate to healthcare needs. And D, they have medical record access, super important, especially if they want a second opinion. They got to send the records to another treating physician. Now, at the top of page 3, if you want to limit any of those powers, you can write it right there. We put none because our clients always say none. But for some reason, you could limit it. I'm not sure what, maybe you'd have a good reason. I don't know of one. I haven't heard one yet. Okay, next after where it says none at the top of page 3, here is something you're going to initial in front of the witnesses when you sign, not now. So you want to decide if your agent is going to have power for a little bit longer after you pass away. So technically this ends when you die, but Minnesota legislature was smart and they said it can go a little bit past when you die, because they're going to be around and involved when you pass away. And so if you want them to have the power to carry out your wishes for organ donation and like cremation or burial, it's just very practical. And so I recommend you would initial those 2 in front of the witnesses. Next, you can, if you want to limit any of the powers listed above, you can say it there. That is something I usually don't have clients ever limit the powers, but we want to give you more flexibility because you're doing this on your own. The next section, A, is HIPAA. So they need the HIPAA rights so they can really access your medical records. I know you said it above, but this really addresses HIPAA. B is your agent shall have access to you. Of course, this is going to be limited by the precautions for COVID-19, but this is because sometimes in nursing homes, they won't let the healthcare agent in and then they can't see what's happening and they're concerned about care. So it's important that your healthcare agent have reasonable access to you. Guardianship. I told you the story about Jeff and Jane. He had to go to court and get a guardianship. If you have a good healthcare directive, you probably won't need a guardianship, especially if you name enough agents. But just in case you do, you're telling the court, hey, I think these people that I named here would be good guardians for me if I need a guardian. I want you to start with considering them. That's what that means. Next, we come to the really important provision on top of page 4. See where it says in bold, intrusive mental health. Okay, I told you this has some provisions that I have never seen in a free healthcare directive. And it's really important. So in 2016, August 1st, there was a new law in Minnesota. And it was in reaction to some really wrong things that were going on. Occasionally in some nursing facilities, people were getting drugged by the staff so they'd be easier to care for. For example, like my dad was such a sweetheart, but when he had dementia, once in a while he would, hit. Anyway, it wasn't a big problem. Sometimes it gets to be a bigger problem. And so they get kind of difficult and it's hard, and people were getting drugged, and then they were easy to care for because they were just slumped over in the chair all day. Well, none of us wants to be the one who is slumped over in the chair all day. And so there was some outrage, and the legislature responded by saying, okay, it was the mental health treatments that were making these people just, zone out. And so that's what they're addressing. And they said, in your healthcare directive, if you want your agent to make decisions about intrusive mental health care, you got to put it in here. It has to be explicitly stated, and you have to have 2 witnesses sign it. We used to be able to do these with notaries all the time, but now we're always doing 2 witnesses because so far all my clients have wanted some version of this paragraph. So it's super important. And maybe you never used any kind of antidepressant or anti-anxiety drug. I mean, some of these drugs are even used for other things, but they have mental health side effects. You may, as a side effect of a drug you're taking or a sickness you have, you might need this. And so if you trust your agent to really understand your wishes, then you'd want to give them this authority. Otherwise, they have to go to court and go through a civil commitment proceeding. Okay, that's what you're trying to avoid by having this form. So I encourage you to take a serious look at this. So this is how we did it for you. If you read paragraph D, it tells the language right out of the statute. They can make intrusive mental health treatment decisions, including voluntary or involuntary electroconvulsive therapy, neuroleptic, psychotropic, and psychoactive meds. We put the most common things that people pick below. So you can either pick, my agent does have all the powers. The second, they have all the powers except anything you want to leave out. If you want to leave out like ECT, sometimes I have clients leave that out. Or my agent has none of these powers. Give you 3 choices there. I think you'll fit in them. The next question is, do you want a second opinion? So some people are understandably very hesitant about this. And so they'll say, well, get another opinion. So you can either say, yes, my agent needs to get another opinion, or no, they don't. They can decide that. Okay. So I'll answer your question later, Cindy. I just saw it. Sorry. Because I already went past that section. Okay. That's it for the powers. And next we're going to go to general healthcare instructions. This, that part 2, starting at the bottom of page 4. So we bolded everything that is your instructions. So this is what I say about our healthcare directive. It doesn't go into the very, very nitty-gritty detail because it's kind of designed to last. If you got to a point in your life where you wanted to have a DNR, DNI, like your health was really failing, or a post of provider's order for life-sustaining treatment, where that's the one that the ambulance drivers will follow and they won't resuscitate you, real serious one, those can like lay on top of ours. And this is still good, but then those go on top of it. So I think this is good language that's vetted to be like what most people want. Some detail, but not huge detail, because look at COVID-19. We're still figuring out what treatments work and what doesn't, and do these ventilators really help that much, and could change next week. So that's the idea behind it, but we did leave room for you guys to put in more specifics if you want. So I encourage you to read the bolded statements on page 4 and 5. If you want to change anything, you can handwrite it and put your initials. It would be better. It would be better to have it typed, but you could try that. But it would be best if you felt comfortable if you lived with this. Okay, so Megan, you can keep going down. What this basically says in better language than this is, I want to be kept comfortable. I don't want extraordinary means. I don't want treatment that's not really going to help me get better. I don't want to be kept alive on a ventilator forever, etc. That kind of thing. Okay, the middle of the page, you can see there's boxes again where you get to pick. And this is organ donation and cremation and burial. So you can pick if you want to donate, don't want to donate, or just let my healthcare agent decide, because I can't decide right now. And then the second one is, do you want cremation or burial, or do you want your healthcare agent to decide? I hope you can tell that it's important to communicate with your healthcare agent, you know, about the intrusive mental health treatment, about your wishes. There's no substitute for them understanding where you're coming from and having this document in place. The two together are really powerful. So I left space there for you to put any instructions. Some people, I want to be buried at Fort Snelling, or whatever you want to say, celebration of life. And then death should not be delayed by artificial means if no hope of recovery. That's another instruction. And then I gave you more space for specific instructions that you can put in. So, okay, once you got there, you got it done. Oh, yeah, yes. This is what I have a lot of clients talk to me about organ donation and all these issues. And I have had medical professionals, and they said that at any age for organ donations, they take eyes and skin, which is amazing. And also, I always think, well, if you think they might be helpful, you can say yes. And if they don't need them, they won't take them. So that's my suggestion. If you're open to it, I would say yes. Okay, so that was owner's question. Thank you, owner, for that. Okay, the next one is signing. Okay, so you got it done. Okay, this is a problem where people fall down. So we really tried to lay out the details for you. The first thing you need to do is find your two good witnesses, okay? And Megan, we need to go down to the next page to show them. This is where the witnesses sign, and this tells you the rules about the witnesses. So it says only one of the two witnesses can be a healthcare provider or the employee of a healthcare provider giving direct care to me on the day I sign this document. So sometimes I have to go to the nursing home because people aren't well enough to come in and get this signed. And the employee is like, a lot of times the policy is no employee can sign them because, the legal staff is concerned that they won't follow these rules right. But actually the truth is one of the witnesses could be someone treating you. And they can be your agents, which is sort of crazy, but they can. So even the people you name can be the witnesses. So I want you to line up their witnesses before you sign it, okay? And so you go to this page to make sure you got the right people. And, you can see 18 years of age. Oh, no. I said the wrong thing. Scratch that. I'm sorry. Yeah, they can't be a healthcare agent. I was thinking of another form. Sorry. So what we did because of this COVID-19 is go back and look at every single requirement of every single form and to see how lenient we can be. So I was mixing it up. So they need to not be the healthcare agent, two other people, and only one of them can be providing care for you or an employee of a company that provides care for you. Probably most of you people, I think, aren't in that case where you're getting care, so it's not an issue. Okay, so you get your two witnesses, then we go back a page to the signature page where you sign. Okay, now so I wrote there, read the requirements for witnesses for COVID-19 safety purposes. They can watch from another room or from outside your house and look in the window, open the window so they can see and hear you. You don't have to touch each other. Don't use the same pen. You can be careful with it. So then I want you to read this aloud to the witnesses before you sign and mean it, because they're there to make sure that you have the capacity to know what you're doing. And also I have in here somewhere that you should show them your ID so they can say they saw your ID, they know who you are. Okay, so you read this aloud. I'm thinking clearly. I agree with everything that's written in this document, and I'm making this willingly. And then you got to say I do or do not, depending what you decided about intrusive mental health treatments in paragraph D. Want my agent to make intrusive mental health decisions for me. And I understand the implications of that decision. I mean, it doesn't have to be the exact words, but that's the gist of it. the witnesses are really there to make sure you understand that. So plus that you know what you're doing generally, but that's why we have two witnesses. So then you sign and they sign and you're done. So congratulations. However, really super important that the right people have the document, right? So this, I think we're going back to the slides because we made it legal. We want to make it available. You can do this, whatever you want. You can do it, scan it and save it. I recommend that. We do that for people in our office. And we also give them paper copies. And so by paper or by email, you want your agent's name to have it, right? You want your healthcare provider to have it. And you can probably just do it online from home now. And maybe you have a couple different providers. Maybe if it's like the Alina system, you know, you just get it in there and you're good. I always say, put it in your glove compartment, in your suitcase. And I mean, have it available. It doesn't hurt to have extra copies, and it doesn't have to be the original. You don't need the original for anything really. You could, you know, I recommend save it in a safe place, but no one's going to demand the original. So just really make it available. My dad went to the ER, you know, a few years back. Suddenly we were out having breakfast and half his face fell and this and that, and he thought he was fine. And so by the time I got there, it happened right at the beginning, he was already going to the hospital. And so I'm driving to the hospital calling my sister's like, where's the healthcare directive? Well, I don't know. Do you? Like, well, I'm not named in it. My sister, the healthcare person. Anyway, we were like, where is it? Where is it? It's just a panic. This is what ensues. It's normal. And we had given it to the doctor and Regions didn't have it. We had to give it to him again later. It wasn't a problem because he came too. But I just thought, oh my gosh, it's so good to like have it available and have several people have it. So one of you will remember where it is and be able to find it. Okay, so, and now is the time for questions. And I will I want to answer Cindy's question, who's being really patient. And I wonder if I can, Cindy, do you want to talk? I made you able to talk if you unmute yourself. It's down in the lower left. Yeah, thank you.
Can you hear me?
I can. So your first choice is 2 or 3 people to act as a group, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking of, you know, we've already talked to our kids about this, and we've unfortunately gone through the same situation. Not my kids, but, you know, we've had to make decisions for my mother when she was dying and my brother who died last year. And although we had one person on the healthcare directive, just us as a family, we all sort of got together and made the decision. And then that one person was responsible for carrying it out. But just to make it easier for my kids who are younger, and they're 18 and 22 and 24, just so one of them doesn't feel like they had the burden of pulling the plug, so to speak, because that's really a heavy thing, having been through it now twice.
Yeah.
You know, just so that they know that they need to make this as a group decision, and so none of them are the responsible ones.
Yeah, and I understand that. That makes perfect sense, Cindy. I think it's important to talk to them before you finalize the healthcare directive. But I would just, Megan, can you go back to that page and I'll coach her on how to change the words a little bit. It's just in how you name the people. So instead of,
I'm thinking I could just bring that second section, you know, commingle the first and the second section that it says, you know, the choices if they're unanimous or,
yeah,
you know, all the people that are available or
to us too, if you want, if you have a question, but you can just say, I trust and appoint so-and-so to make healthcare. So what we would do in the office is take that first section and repeat it 3 times, sort of right there. Appointment of alternative. Just appoint the order name. Yeah. Did you talk to your kids about it yet?
Yeah, we actually printed some goofy thing off online a little while ago, and we did have the conversation with our kids, and on this form, we picked one, but I made it very clear that, because that's all this form had, it was only like maybe a couple page form, and I just made it verbally very clear to them, and they all, at the moment, they all get along, and you know how that all goes, but
yeah.
if I was going to do this on a, if I'm going to redo this again and get very explicit, we all verbally agreed, but I would want this in writing, I guess.
Yeah, so you could doctor it up. I have occasionally had facilities object when something was handwritten on a healthcare directive, but I think they were being difficult. So I just, that's what concerns me about that. But some people in your shoes will name them like 1, 2, 3, but tell them, you guys, it's very common that they'll say, I want you to communicate with your brothers and sisters. I want everybody to agree if at all possible, but I'm making this the point person. So you could do it the way we have it, or you could doctor it to make them all 3 at the same time.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking. Any other questions? I can't see the chat now. Let's see. It's our first time doing this, and I can't see you guys. Okay, Daniela, do you want me to make you, let's see, able to talk? We did our first webinar last week. This is our second one. So we're learning along with everybody else right now.
Yeah. Hey, Margaret, thank you for having me. My question is, I do a lot of healthcare directives with people and families, and I feel like my job is more so to offer getting this completed. A lot of people will decline it, assuming that, oh, my family knows what I want, and we've had these conversations, and I try to explain the benefits of having it written and validated on paper. But would you clarify, let's say I have a couple who is married, is it wrong of them to assume that they have the right as the spouse to make these decisions if the time came?
This is a very good question. Absolutely, the spouse has no right. None.
No, okay.
None. The parent has no right. The child has no right. A spouse has no right. See, this has evolved because in the olden days, I think things were looser and people weren't getting sued all the time for things, and they weren't as careful. But you know, the medical provider, they don't know what the relationship is between the spouses.
Right.
Actually, the one I told you where the lady fell down the stairs, they had been separated 4 years.
Wow.
He only didn't divorce her because he was helping her out because she's so bad off financially. And when she fell down the stairs, he was like, "Oh my gosh, my 401k." I mean, it was a lot more complicated than what I told you. And you know, but he was very loving and he was her caregiver, you know, after she got hurt. But it could have been not the case.
Right. Okay. And that's really good for me to know, because a lot of people, like I mentioned, really just assume that. And it was really good to learn about the process. You said it took about 2 months for that guardianship to go through. Some people don't even have a week. And then the cost of it too, when you could just, Alina offers getting the healthcare directive done for free.
Yeah. But do you guys think, does Alina have the intrusive mental health language on it yet?
Not yet. And that is something that I will email the director about for the healthcare, just to see if they can make some changes to that, because it does not cover it in detail like you had it. So I think that would be really important, especially, you know, if you have someone with Alzheimer's, and like what you were sharing with us about your father, it's like we don't even think about all the medications that they try to use to intervene their behaviors or whatever not's happening in the hospital. So I think that's really, and I like the idea of getting a second opinion, because a lot of people don't think about those things. They don't consider getting a second opinion, not even just life or death situations, but in general. So I'm gonna ask, I'm gonna see if I can get in touch with this individual.
That'd be great. I've been telling people that for 3 years.
Yeah. It's really great detail.
Okay. I really appreciate your input from the medical side. I think it's an interesting combination of legal and medical, these directives. So it's important to work together. Yeah, and I should say there is an emergency guardianship. You can get one in maybe a week or two, but then you always have to go get the permanent one. So it costs almost twice as much. And then you have to make reports to the court. And I mean, it goes on even after the person dies. There's more expenses and more, anyway. But the first push where you get the letters, you could either get them maybe in a week or two, but then you have to do it again later, or you can do the non-emergency, and then that takes about, I'd say, 2 months average.
Okay. One other question I have for you is because, at least in my job, I'm able to offer, like, I'm a notary. So before the COVID, I was able to meet people and notarize their healthcare directives. A lot of people are kind of at home, and I know you mentioned, like, people can do it outside the window and things like that. But if that is not an option, we got an email from this director stating that we are still encouraging everybody to complete a healthcare directive, and even if it's not notarized, just to sign it and keep it close by in case they are affected either by COVID or something else where they need to go to the hospital. Would you agree with that or no?
Yes, us estate planners have been discussing this at length, and I was on a call not too long ago with this about wills and healthcare directives, and why don't we just have them sign? I mean, if you really can't do anything else, yes.
Okay.
But is it going to hold up? I mean, it puts me in a bad spot because I don't want to commit malpractice, right? I mean,
Right.
so it's like it's a pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really can't, but we use mobile notaries, that's how we're doing our signings. We're paying that expense ourselves, and they come to the person's house. Like for wills, you need 2 witnesses. And
Yeah.
we've been asking our clients if they can provide the 2 witnesses. I mean, it's been working out. Some people want to wait and some people want to do it right now.
Okay.
It takes some brainstorming, but also we have to be more flexible these days. And the electronic notarization in Minnesota is so unwieldy. No one's really implemented it yet, but we're looking at implementing it. So,
Okay. And you mentioned that you have mobile notaries. If you like need anybody in Scott County or in this area, because I live here, you can reach out and I'd be happy to.
Did you give us your name already? Or not?
Yeah, Megan and I are connected via email.
You sent me that. I asked you to go on our list. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Tracy, where are you? Okay, Tracy, you're open to talk. I guess I should close the people who are done talking.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. I just had a follow-up question to adding the agent. So you establish your first pick, and then the ones that you list underneath there are those boxes that you check that they act independently, majority, that's just the people below that. Is that correct?
Yes, pretty much.
Okay, I wanted to be sure.
Cindy was talking about putting them all above, but the way we created the form is to not put them all above because most people don't do that, and we're trying to make it work for most people. So
okay,
it's for the people below. If you decide you want them to act together, but if you say jointly, then you got to put, instead of it's alternate, first alternate, second alternate, third alternate. You got to put first alternate. Like if there's 2 together and then the third is by themselves, you'd put first alternate, second alternate. Does that make sense? Because if you just have a person up above and then first, second, and third, I think it looks like they're not joint.
Right.
So
yeah.
I would change them to be the same. That's what we do for people if they want joint people. I would just caution you though, generally speaking, most people don't do joint. I know it makes sense sometimes, and I'm not saying I would never do it, but you just get the issue of what if they don't agree. So
right. Okay.
You don't want them to have to go to court or anything.
Okay. Right. That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Let me figure out how to do that, Megan. Welcome. And then Gail, I'm going to I will mute the people that already talked. Okay. Thanks, Megan.
Hi. We have Mark is with me here too, and we have question about the difference between the healthcare agent and the guardianship, and if you could just talk about like what authority do the different powers have?
Okay. Off the top of my head, a guardian is kind of a super healthcare agent. This is all, lay talk kind of, I'm translating. So the healthcare agent, you appoint ahead of time your own self and lay out the parameters, okay? And there's a statute that covers it. The guardian must be appointed by the court. There's a whole bunch of rigmarole that you go through, and the standard is that it has to be the least restrictive measure possible. So if the person has the ability to appoint a healthcare agent, that has to come first. If there's just other lesser means, like communicate with them electronically because they can't speak anymore or anything like that, the court has to make sure that it's the least restrictive measure that is possible and that this is the best person that is possible. Then there's a long list of powers that the guardian can have, and then you have to show that each one is really needed. Like, for instance, sometimes people, they can still vote or they could still decide where they live, but what they really need help with is their meds because they don't take them or something. So it actually is customized. And then the guardian has to make an annual report to the court. They have a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of the person. And then the conservator, who a lot of times is the same person, they handle the money, and the guardian handles, it's called the person. The person that they're handling is called the ward. So they have more powers and they're more custom, but usually if you have a good healthcare directive, you won't need a guardian. Unless it's not working and your family's fighting, and then people go to court and fight over who gets to be the guardian.
Eek. Okay. Any questions about that?
No, I'll just look into it more.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, you can tell me if you want to talk one-on-one about that, but you'd rather avoid it if you can. And so when people come to our office asking about guardian, we are always looking to see if we can avoid it, because for one thing, we have to show the court that there was no less restrictive measure, and we want to do it the easiest way possible. So that's kind of the steps. You don't want to plan for it unless it's a temporary guardianship. When like you're sick with COVID-19 and you have minor kids, then you need a temporary guardianship. That's different, and that's our next webinar.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So Tracy, let me mute Gail and Mark. Okay. So Tracy, well, the witnesses, they have to watch you sign it. So.
Of course. Okay. I get it. Yeah.
But I mean, they can be in the other room or outside, or you can do it outside. Attorneys are doing these drive-by signings. You set up a table and, keep your distance and don't share a pen. And we put their signatures on separate pieces of paper.
Oh, okay.
And the form they gave you. So you can, obviously someone has to print it and touch it and hand it to them and get it back, but.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else? Oh, has this been helpful to you, and do you have feedback? Because it's the first time we did this. Well, I'm going to keep talking. You guys can put that in there, because I appreciate the questions, and I'm going to offer you the free resource next. Actually, it's going to be Megan offering you the free resource, because you got this healthcare directive. Hopefully you're going to have it nailed down. But there's more, because there's your finances, which is before and after you die, and will or trust, and avoiding probate. I don't even want to think about how bad the courts are going to be when they reopen with probates. And so got stuff, a few people that are in it right now, and hopefully we can get them out soon. But there's more pieces. It's great to get this piece done, but in case you're concerned and feel like you're ready to start thinking about other pieces, then Megan is happy to, for free, talk to you about it and your concerns.
Yeah, we're offering a virtual life and legacy session. So we've been using Zoom, similar to which this webinar was hosted with. And so it's just a chance for us to learn a little bit more about you. You can learn a little bit more about us. And if there's any other gaps in your estate plan, that's what we go through, can go through our process, costs, and things like that if you need anything in addition to the healthcare directive.
Do I have to not be the host for them to see you on video, Megan?
I don't know. You could try that. Do you want to make me the host and then I can see?
Yeah, that's what I was supposed to do. I forgot. Sorry. Make host. Okay. There you are. Okay. I wanted you guys to see Megan in real life.
Hello.
Megan lives in New Richmond, Wisconsin. So we have a couple of employees from there, Megan and her sister, and they're really enjoying the lack of commute.
Yes, it's been nice. So,
but yeah, Megan is very good. We take that time. We ask about your concerns, your questions, your situation. It's all confidential, by the way. So you don't worry, because we're going to ask you personal things that maybe your brother doesn't know, but like your finances, your health, your relationships, whatever. But knowing that really helps us then to educate you about, well, you could go this route, maybe a will plan or a trust plan, and these are the pros and cons for you. Here, here's what would help with this. This wouldn't help, but it would be cheaper, but whatever. We can really educate you and empower you to make a decision about what you want to do. It's not a pressure thing. It's not a no obligation thing. But we understand that these are big decisions and they're important, and we want you to get educated. So that's why Megan's happy to do that with you, and she does a great job, in my opinion, and actually get a lot of feedback about that. So that's the free resources besides your healthcare directive that we just want to make available to you. I want to thank you all for coming. If you want to do the Life and Legacy session, how are we doing that, Megan? How are we doing the signups? Because we don't have a clipboard here.
I'll send everyone a follow-up email, and if you're interested, you can talk to me, email me back, and we can get you on the calendar. So that's probably going to be the best way to do it. So I'll send all the attendees an email following up.
Right. So I recommend that would be worth your time if you're concerned about these things, getting your wishes, not only the healthcare directive, but your finances, things go smoothly for your family, avoiding hassle. Oh my goodness, very, very many important things besides the healthcare directive. So that's it. And I have a closing story. This is Pete and Andrea. Pete called me a few years ago. He was also like about 60, young. And his wife was diagnosed with dementia about a year before. He was still working, but it went really fast because it was early onset. And the past few weeks, she really nosedives, and they took her in for all these tests. And sure enough, the tests confirmed that she had this big drop. Like my dad, that would happen with my dad. Like he would have little strokes or something, and it wouldn't be just gradual, all of a sudden drop off. So anyway, he called because, of course, as soon as she got diagnosed, he's like, I can update our estate plan. But so much was going on. And he couldn't. So now he was afraid, it's too late. And he called me so stressed out, beating himself up and all that. I'm like, it's okay. Well, let me help you. I just want to see if she still has capacity to sign the documents. Just come on in and we'll have just a conversation. And so he's like, okay. And then he calls me back the next day. He goes, it was grueling for her to go through all those doctor's tests. I can't make her come to your office. I was like, well, she won't even know, but okay. I said, that's okay. Just you come in. So he came into the first meeting, and then he saw that it really wasn't scary and everything. And thankfully, I thought she had capacity. And before he came in, before I met her, actually, I was really worried about it. If Andrea didn't have capacity, then we had to go through this whole guardianship thing I was telling you about. And she'd have to go up and testify in the witness stand. And if he thought it was intimidating to come talk to me, much more intimidating. And then she'd have her own lawyer appointed, and then a court visitor would visit her and read her rights. It's just kind of horrible. And then she'd have to testify, unless she was really bad, but see, she wasn't that bad, so she would have had to. So I was really hoping we wouldn't have to do that for their sake. And so fast forward a couple weeks, maybe a week or two, I don't know. They were in my office. Their daughter was there too. They signed their healthcare directive, their power of attorney, the trust, everything. They got it all wrapped up with a bow. It was a very happy day. Pete retired from his job early. They moved up to the cabin. He took care of her. She actually died a couple years ago. But the difference, for Pete was he made the phone call. It was hard to do. He had put it off. He knew it. He had so much on his plate. He was beating himself up. But in the end, it worked out really well. And so we're so glad you're here, and spread the word, because it actually saves a ton of stress, time, and money to plan ahead. with somebody who's really an experienced estate planner who does that for most of their practice. That's my recommendation. That's just my little soapbox. But I really, really glad that you're here. We really want you to have smooth sailing in the rough waters whenever they come. Thank you very much. I'm glad you found this helpful. I get to talk to Megan about how the webinars work. It'll be in the email, Daniela. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll upload it. And then I'll send you the link to the recorded version of this.
Yeah, we'd especially like you to share it with healthcare workers.
Yep.
Really want to help them out. Okay, well, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's time. You're welcome.
Our next one, yep, and we have 3 other ones other than this one. So there's more information about those. I'll send an email. The next one's going to be on temporary guardianships for minor kids. So
that's for people with minor kids or dependent adult kids or something. And then next after that will be will versus trust, kind of like how your will is probably, if you even have one, you know, it's probably not going to work as well as you think it will. That's what a lot of people find out. And the 4th one is about planning for long-term care and Medicaid in this whole COVID situation too. All of these things are just more critical now, I think, than ever. So we wanted to try out the webinar concept. Thank you. We're also welcome. We also appreciate constructive feedback to help us improve. You've been a great group. Thanks for the activity and questions and chatting.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.